Fiqh without ethics. Wife cannot refuse intimacy. Many Muslims believe that when a man is married, he does not need to get consent for sex, as there is no such thing as marital rape in Islam. This is untrue, as it is prohibited to harm a spouse. Contrary to the prophetic example of showing kindness towards women, many Muslims have adopted a chauvinistic interpretation of Islam, where women are solely viewed as vessels of male pleasure or procreation. Many Muslims also receive minimal or poor sex education, which has contributed to the false notion that a Muslim husband is allowed to force himself on his wife. Such ideas need to be debunked, as there are many women who are suffering in silence due to marital abuse. In Islam, sex between a married couple is an act of worship. The Quran speaks about marriage being a binding covenant, and that is in Surah An-Nisa, the 4th chapter of the Quran, verse 21, and a union built on love, mercy, and tranquility, and that is from the 30th chapter, Surah Rum, verse 21. This indicates that a woman should feel safe and protected in her marital home. Islam also gives women the right to sexual fulfillment, and if unsatisfied, can be grounds for divorce. The Quran instructs men to live with your wives in a good manner, and that is in Surah An-Nisa, so the chapter about women, verse 19, so it's 4:19. And the Prophet implored men to treat women well, indicating the importance of good treatment in the bedroom, including sexual consent. Sexual violence is a taboo topic in Muslim communities despite its prevalence. Studies show that 1 in 3 women are subjected to physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner. There should be zero tolerance shown towards sexual violence towards girls and women in the Muslim community. The Prophet did not tolerate men harming women, even when the perpetrators were some of his male companions. He did not offer them an excuse, nor did he accuse the women of lying when they complained about marital abuse. The Prophet actively taught women their Islamic rights, and he empowered his female companions to teach other women about their sexual rights. In Islam, men have rights over their wives, and women have rights over their husbands. In the case of marital relations, most Muslim scholars state that it is unlawful for a woman to refuse marital intimacy without a legitimate reason. Sadly, some Muslims misunderstand this marital right, whereby they believe sexual consent is not required in marriage. Certain hadiths are misunderstood or weaponized to force women in the bedroom. This was not the approach of the Prophet. He never abused or coerced a woman who refused a marriage proposal or intimacy in marriage. Sadly, some clerics allege that marital rape does not exist in Islam, as sex is part of marriage and husbands have an undeniable right to intimacy. Others claim that marital rape is a Western feminist import, and married women who allege rape are lying. Such claims need to be debunked, as marital rape is an abominable act and is clearly against Islamic teachings. For many Muslims nowadays, sex is a taboo topic. This is surprising given Islam's rich erotic tradition. Since the colonization of the Muslim world, a number of Muslims have adopted a puritanical, ultra-conservative interpretation of Islam, where women are considered a constant source of sexual temptation. This has led to warped ideas about male-female relations and female sexuality amongst some Muslim men. Below are some examples I have heard that practicing brothers say. It is better for a man to take his rights than commit zina, i.e. adultery. My wife is not allowed to refuse intimacy. It's my Islamic right. In Islam, there is no such thing as rape in marriage. That is feminism. Several Muslim women complain about a lack of empathy amongst religious scholars when discussing marriage, as the needs of women are often neglected or minimized. In contrast to the example of the Prophet, women's sexual rights are rarely discussed in religious sermons and lectures by modern-day preachers. The Prophet and early Muslim scholars spoke frankly to men about female pleasure and women's right to satisfaction. Some Muslims ask why sexual consent is not clearly mentioned in classical books of fiqh, i.e. Islamic law. Pre-modern scholars of fiqh were primarily concerned with determining the legal ruling regarding bodily acts. Scholars assumed husbands would not harm their wives, as inflicting harm was clearly prohibited by the Prophet. Some modern-day scholars argue that marital rape falls within the category of spousal harm, which is considered a sinful act and heinous offense. As a body of rules, fiqh is not intended to instruct us on how to be a good spouse, better lover, or overcome sexual problems. Historically, these matters were discussed by Muslim scholars in books of eritology or medical sexology, known as ilm al-ba or ilm al-nikah. Muslim scholars also wrote ethical books, adab, to teach people how to develop good character and moral behavior based on exemplary prophetic example. The Prophet outlined not only the laws, but the ethical principles that should govern sexual behavior and relationships between men and women. Given the great misunderstanding surrounding sexual consent in Muslim communities, consent should be taught and discussed at length in schools, mosques, and events discussing male-female relations. The Prophet and early scholars were not shy to speak frankly about intimate matters affecting women in their communities. Therefore, religious scholars and preachers of today should also not feel shy to speak about such matters, especially when women are being abused or fear being abused in the place where they should feel most protected.